This is Grandmaster Boris Alterman and you're watching Gambit Guide. The second part of B4 Gambit in the Scandinavian defense. So in the previous lecture we studied the position after e4, d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, which leads to the classical Scandinavian defense when black is trying to get rid of white's central pawn immediately, but white is taking the advantage of black's early queen's development by playing knight c3, so force black's queen to go away from the center. So after queen a5, instead of continuing the classical fashion, the pawn sacrifice, so black is not going to lose here immediately. So after queen takes b4, which we studied the last time, and rook b1, white is having the long-term initiative because the open b file and also better development of all these pieces, as well black's bishop on c8 has to stay there for a while, so just bishop cannot leave the c8 square since b7 pawn is under threat. So in the position we studied after queen d6, d4, knight f6 and knight f3, so it's just quite easy to understand that bishop cannot go to g4 because rook takes b7, and many variations white is threatening to bring his knight to b5 and to attack black's queen and then maybe to bring the bishop, so that's why quite useful for black to play in this position c6. This move also takes more control over the b5 square and also over the center d5 square. So after c6 white has a choice, so where to develop the light square bishop. Since that white main target is the king side, that most natural square for bishop is on d3, from where bishop is looking towards the black's king side. So we are following the game between John Dalpon and Gerard Griespan from the Netherlands Championship 1922. So when after e6, short castling, and bishop e7, white immediately moved its rook to b3, also intending in variations to play bishop a3 and planning later on to lift the rook via the third rank to the king side. So just white is intending to bring all the pieces on the king side and create their strong pressure. Despite the fact black is having extra pawn, it's extremely difficult for black to organize a counterplay. So his position is very safe, but after just one slip, everything could be demolished. Exactly what happened in this game. After short castling or queen c7, so when black is trying to avoid bishop a3 move, knight e5, short castling, and now knight e4, white is trying to get rid of the last defenders of the black's king side. So after knight e4 we have many different threats. Also knight takes f6, also bishop to f4, also knight g5. For instance, if black is just trying to continue developing his queen side after b6, intending to bring the bishop to b7 and then to counterattack white center after c5, this leads to immediate disaster after white to move and win. How could you find this? Look, all white pieces are looking towards the black's king side. And the queen is just a move away from the h5 square. So this, of course, helps us to guess the right combination. And this would be knight takes f6 check. Bishop takes f6. So after getting rid of the last piece which defended black's king side, so white's coming with a smashing combination. So there's a typical sacrifice. Bishop takes h7 check. Ruins black's king side after king takes h7 and queen h5. By playing king g8, black felt nothing bad about his position, but here we see the key point of the rook b3 move. So the rook is just one move, change the direction from the queen side to the king side, and black just completely hopeless against the forthcoming queen h8, and this would be the checkmate. So neither defense g6 or rook d8 cannot stop this queen h7 and queen h8 checkmate. For instance, g6 will be made by queen h7, when rook d8 would be made by queen h8, and this is also checkmate. So clearly that b6 is quite serious mistake in this position. However, even move like knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and knight d7 cannot save black, since white could perform the similar combination. Bishop takes h7, check. King takes h7. Brings the queen to h5 with a check. King g8, and now after rook h3, so black king still cannot leave, because f7 square controlled by the knight, and knight takes e5 will be made by queen h7 checkmate. If you try to cover h7 square after knight f6, so we have queen h8, and this is a checkmate. So remember this great combination with bishop takes h7 with the incoming attack over the h file, sends to the white heavy artillery with the queen and the rook. So definitely it's quite dangerous for black to capture on e4. So probably black has to play knight bd7. In that case, after bishop f4, the position is still very unpleasant. So threatening the queen. Now, if knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, and queen d8, once again white is going for the same idea. So twice already I showed this combination, and knight takes f6 check, clearing the diagonal for the bishop. So after bishop takes f6, check on h7, king takes h7, check on h5, king g8, and now rook to h3, and it's over, everything finished. The threat queen h8 or queen h7, just black absolutely hopeless against it. So probably in such a position black has to look for a move like queen d8 or even queen a5. However, white is having very serious attack on the king side, so we can continue moving the queen to f3 and then to h3. Also another good opportunity is just to play knight g5, continue looking attack on the king side. So white is having long-term pressure, and don't forget that the rook from b3 will join the attack very soon. So you say, if after a capture on b4, white has so interesting opportunity to continue attacking my position, so what is the best defensive setup for black? Let's try to find it. Queen takes b4, rook b1, and queen d6, d4, knight f6, or c6, knight f3, knight f6, and bishop d3. First of all, would be useful for black to move the bishop to g7 and to protect very solid his king side. So that's why setup with the pawn on g6 would be recommended in such a situation. So after g6, bishop g7 and short castling, black still keeping the bishop open, so bishop could be developed on g4 or e6 later on. And at the same time, black's king side is quite good protected. So we lock the diagonal b1 h7, and white is not possible anymore for white to create and to perform this combination h7 square, just destroying completely the black's king side. Second option after e6, short castling, bishop e7 and rook b3, just not to castle too fast. After queen c7, knight e5, so black has to play knight bd7 instead of castling. So intending maybe later on to develop his queenside after b6 and bishop b7, and only then, when all black pieces just already in the game, when black completely finish his development, just only then to think about castling the king, since white is not having such a direct threats against the black's kingside position. Anyway, g6 I would suggest as a better solution in this b4 gambit line. However, if you don't like to study and to be under attack for a while, that you can play, just not to accept this pawn sacrifice. Declined b4 gambit is queen e5 check. So here I have plenty of games. However, white is keeping slightly better chances everywhere, since black had to move once again his queen, and this allowing white to continue just playing for development advantage, and thanks to the better development and better control over the center, so white is keeping better chances everywhere. In the position after queen e5, I would recommend just simply to play bishop e2 instead of just tricky move like knight e2. So just the most natural square for the knight is f3, so after bishop e2, c6, knight f3, queen c7, and short castling. The game between Emanuel Lasker and Fortune from the 1908 during the simultaneous exhibition in Netherlands. So after short castling, Lasker's opponent played bishop g4, d4, e6, and now we can see additional advantage of b4 pawns move, so white could simply play b5, trying to get rid of the black c6 pawn and just later on to open up a position in the center. Bishop d6, h3, bishop f5, b takes c6. So now it was absolutely necessary for black to play b takes c6 instead. Unfortunately, Lasker's opponent played knight takes c6, and this allowed Lasker quite easily to get two bishops advantage and huge initiative in the center after knight b5, queen d7, knight takes d6, queen takes d6, c4. So white is having two powerful bishops and strong control over the all center squares. Knight e7. And now for improving position of the bishop, white plays a4, just preparing to bring the bishop to the a3 fa diagonal, where black is going to castle. Short castling, bishop a3, queen d7, d4, d5. So suddenly black is in big trouble, so he cannot capture twice on d5 because f8 rook is gone. For instance, after knight takes d5, white simply plays bishop takes f8. Same problem after queen takes d5. We just first trading, and only after knight takes d5 playing bishop takes f8, and game is over. Just white is getting extra exchange up with no much compensation, of course. So after e takes d5, c takes d5, black tried to escape after knight a5. However, bishop b5. So Lasker is playing very aggressive. So very energetic play. After queen d8 and rook e1, so we can understand that black is in big trouble. So e7, knight is under threat. Two bishops in the open position is just quite serious advantage. So rook e8 not possible because bishop takes e8. After knight g6, bishop takes f8, queen takes f8, and knight d4. The game just almost over, and Lasker quite easily realized his huge material advantage. So the other game between Gyula Breyer and Fritz Englund, which played in 1913, b4, queen e5 check, bishop e2, c6. Black was trying to fight for the center immediately after knight f3, queen c7, and short casting. He immediately played e7, e5, which just gave for Gyula Breyer immediate press over the black's e5 pawn after interesting and quite deep move rook e1. So white is preparing to open up a position after d4, since black's king is still stuck in the center. When bishop takes b4 leads to the huge advantage for white after knight takes e5, and black just cannot accept the sacrifice, since queen takes e5 will be met by move like bishop c4, and black is losing its queen for no compensation. So after rook e1, black is already in quite difficult situation, and let's see what happened. Bishop d6, d4, trying to open up a position, knight e7, knight takes e5, bishop takes b4, bishop d2. So white is just developing all his pieces very fast when black is having a lot of problems. Knight e7, so this is just serious mistake. However, white just having a lot of threats in this position. So why knight d7 is a bad move? White just simply plays knight to b5, catching this bishop on b4 after c takes b5 and bishop takes b4. And once again we see the same picture. White has two very powerful pieces. Black's king just cannot escape from these threats. Knight takes e5. Intermediate, bishop takes b5 check. So both knights now are nice targets. King f8. Rook takes e5. Bishop e6. Queen e2, intending d4, d5, intending bishop takes e7, winning a piece. So black has only move rook d8. And now white starts his final combination. So it's obviously that we have here many different opportunities. I believe that even move like rook takes e6 wins almost instantly. But as Paul Morphy showed us in his brilliant example, when you have the great development advantage, you have to open files and diagonals for your pieces, especially the central files, and to get control over it. White is sacrificing a pawn after d4, d5, just continues this task of opening the position completely. So after rook takes d5, rook takes d5, and bishop takes d5, while white just invite one more piece into the attack after rook d1. Black bishop on d5 is hanging. a6. Now rook takes to d5, a takes b5, and finally white is just finishing the game with a nice combination. White to move and win. So we sacrifice the queen temporarily. Queen takes e7, and after queen takes e7, the queen is just pinned. White move his rook to the back rank, and this is a checkmate. So this is great finish by Gyula Breyer. So after all the well-known the Breyer variation in the Rai Lopez against Englund Fritz in Scheveningen tournament 1913. So even now, even here, we can see that it's not so easy for black to solve all his problems after b4 and queen e5 check. So let's look once again this opening part. So move queen e5 just still keeps for white quite obvious advantage, since black is just moving for the third time already queens in the opening, and later on after knight f3 queen should go just one more time. So clearly that queen b6 or queen f5 just not helping so much also black. I believe that queen takes b4 accepting the sacrifice is the best reaction, and as I suggested after rook b1 queen d6, just you have to keep your position quite safe, especially on the king side, by fianchetting the bishop via g7 and just trying to stop all white's aggressive ideas over the b1 h7 diagonal, so where usually white is moving his pieces, bishop and rook via the third rank, etc. Still, the position is very, very complicated, and white is having, of course, a lot of opportunities just to continue its attack on the king side and in the center, where white is having more space and more control. However, if you would like just to have interesting weapon against the Scandinavian defense and you would like to surprise your opponent, so you're welcome to join the b4 club. So this interesting pawn sacrifice is really playable and really possible. So it was the second part of the Scandinavian b4 gambit, and if you have any question about the gambit guide, you may leave me a message on ICC. For the rest of my lectures about gambit guide, you can go to www.chess.fm. Thanks everybody. See you next time.